Hi, today we have the pleasure to welcome our guest, Stina Gustafsson. Stina is an art marketer and brander. You have worked with a lot of local brands, such as co-galleries and others here in Berlin. You are also one of the co-founders of the Hangar One charity, where you organize workshops for kids at the, like creative workshops for kids at the refugee center in Neukölln. And you are also very active in the art/blockchain scene. So welcome.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I am very active in the art/blockchain scene. I'm currently leading the art initiative for the new Blockchain Foundation Department of Decentralization here in Berlin, where we do research, exhibitions, a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, cool. So yeah, thank you very much for making it. The first question actually that I have is like, what inspires you in your work?
There's two things that really inspires me. The first thing is to just give access to art and culture to everyone, which I think tech initiatives and applications can really do. And I think it's also interesting how through tech and art you can give foundations for smaller communities and such as well to develop their own culture. Secondly, as well, I think active interactions, cross-sector interactions with the creative world and the art world is something that's also super inspiring, because I really believe that that's where you have a lot of innovation and a lot of development, and you also really create or you have an opportunity to really create a deeper understanding for groups and problems and conversations that you might not have gotten otherwise.
And since actually branding is really very important in the art world, like how do you think someone can build a better art brand?
I think that is a really curious question that that needs to be thought about a lot. I think one thing that's really important actually is potentially taking a step away from this notion of really creating a brand and just really concentrate on something that you want to do and get really good in that and really focus on that thing. And then I think once you have that expertise or develop your product, your idea, whatever you develop, I think the brand will then quite naturally come from there as well. That being said, though, I really do understand the importance of the brand, and because of marketing and such, having worked with commercial marketing for trend insight agencies. However, I think it's within the art world, I think it's a lot about really having the expertise and getting really good at what you're doing, and then that will kind of follow.
What are like the main 3 challenges, let's say, when you work with art brands?
I think one of them is this notion of having to create a brand very quickly. I think that's something is curious working in the art world. I think it is what's really important for specifically the art world is actually the expertise rather than the brand, and I think that's something that's quite fundamentally an issue with a lot of people that I've worked with, that is the focus on the brand. The brand needs to come rather than the expertise. Secondly, as well, I think as with everything, as with everyone in the art world, there's just the lack of funding as well, which is super problematic. That a lot of it needs to happen quite quickly because there's such limited fundings that it needs to happen really quick, which then also doesn't necessarily allow for that expertise to grow in a more natural, sustainable way, which I think it's something that's really important for every brand.
Yeah, cool. And also, like the other focus is this intersection of technology and art. What do you think about this combination?
I think it's a really curious intersection, but also quite problematic one. I think it's, like I said before, I think it's really curious because specifically you have this kind of cross-sector interaction, or you have the potential for it, and I think when you have that, that's when like really crazy and really interesting innovation stuff can actually happen. Also, like I said before, understanding and just building bridges between communities and people. I think when you have this, that's super cool. It's also really problematic because you have 2 communities that's so extremely different from each other, and trying to actually have these interactions is super curious and doesn't always happen. I'm very much from the art world and moving around within the blockchain world, which is so tech heavy, specifically the Ethereum blockchain. I usually get approached with the solution. You know, I've solved the problem in the art world, which I always find really curious, because I always wondered, like, oh, what kind of problem have you solved? But it's curious because in many cases this person has come up with a solution for a problem that's never really been discussed with anyone in the art world. Quite often people talk about cutting out the gallery, that you just bring the bias straight to the artist, and I don't think that is a solution in any way. I think that's highly problematic. For me, that's essentially going to a restaurant and then for some reason decide that you only want to pay the chef and not pay anyone else, because, you know, then you've brought the customers to the person who's creating the food. If you're cutting out the gallery, it's the same thing. You are cutting out so many people who sits on a lot of expertise that just really brings so much to this world. Another one as well that I usually get approached with is that you have someone coming saying, "Oh, I've solved the problem in the art world, but they don't want to listen to me, so I can't actually solve it." Which again comes to this kind of cross-sector interaction, that it doesn't happen. And I think that's really the main problem, is that there's just not enough exchange for this to really happen and to be what I think it can be. There needs to be more exchange between the very different communities.
Yeah. So what would be actually your, let's say, advice or comments or feedback to these art tech startups or people working in the art field in general?
Have the conversations. Yeah. Like, go out and speak to as many people as you can. Speak to the developers, speak to the artists, speak to the gallerists, speak to the art administrator, speak to everyone. Because if you really want to solve, I don't necessarily believe in the case of just coming up with a problem that you want to solve. Like, actually have, you know, identify real problems within the world that you want to work with, if that's the art world, and just, you know, have the conversation with everyone and then help them identify or, you know, troubleshoot with them. Maybe it is a legit problem that they then gather around and say, actually, yes, this is great, we really need this. Or it might be that, oh, this is interesting, but, you know, maybe you think about it from this way instead. So have the conversations, speak to everyone.
Yeah, thank you very much. So you know it now, talk to all the people and have conversation.